edition of the Ad Podcast. We've got a great guest for you today. Keith Bendes is a prominent marketing strategist and thought leader and executive serving as Chief Strategy Officer at Linqia, the leading influencer marketing agency for enterprise brands. Since joining the firm, Bendes has been instrumental in shifting influencer marketing from a social-only tactic to a scalable, data-driven business strategy. He advocates for using creator content across the entire marketing funnel, including television commercials, out-of-home ads, and retail media. He's a frequent contributor to Forbes and a globally recognized speaker on the evolution of the creator economy. He co-hosts the renowned podcast Creator Economy Live, where he interviews top brand executives and creators about the practicalities of building authentic partnerships and measuring ROI in social commerce. Before his tenure at Linqia, Bendes spent over a decade in marketing and sales, including significant time at Unilever across trade marketing and customer development. His brand side perspective allows him to help large-scale CPG brands like Pepsi, Kraft, and McDonald's integrate influencers into their broader corporate ecosystems. In 2006, he's been a leading voice on Agentic AI in the AI-driven search, helping brands understand how to remain the trusted answer in an era where AI assistants increasingly replace traditional links. He's a proponent of episodic and serialized content, urging brands to move away from one-off posts in favor of long-term native-driven partnerships with creators. He's also known for his human-centric approach to data. He often argues that while technology and AI provide the necessary scale, the magic of marketing still lies in the human storytelling and the emotional resonance that only creators can provide to a community. Keith, thanks so much for coming on, man. It's been a while. I've been excited to have you come on and share with the audience a little bit about your career and your story.
That is the most robust intro I have ever heard about. There's got to be Claude digging all of that information up for you, because that was deep.
Don't you love it? Don't you love it? Well, full transparency, there was a time when I did anywhere from an hour to 4 hours of research on every podcast. And to some degree, I did like that process because, by listening to all your stuff and watching as much of your stuff as you can and reading all those articles, you do get the human insight, and you can kind of find the little things that you like as a professional, as a person, actually, to ask guests. But, the scale in which AI can, go through and really find, the salient points, as they say, I think is, it's just impossible to give up the temptation of, having that AI assistant. But I'd be curious, as a fellow podcaster, how much are you relying on AI to, help you supplement your research?
A lot. I feel like I'm now moving to this place where for the last few years, since I guess ChatGPT launched, I've been in the chat mode of AI, which is very helpful. It's like having an assistant in your pocket, and every marketer could certainly use an assistant. So I don't want to undermine the value of that, but I still have wanted a little bit for this age of just AI optimization and efficiency that everybody promised. And I got to be honest, the last few months with Cowork is the first time I've really seen it's blowing my mind what AI not just does for you in a chat setting and then you go implement, but what can just completely implement for you. And now I'm obsessed with watching Claude videos from influencers and how to set up, meta ads with just hundreds of variations using AI. I wake up every morning and, I sit down and AI has summarized my key tasks for the day. What's the most important to do? It is blowing my mind what it could do on its own.
Wow. Well, that's a pretty impressive vote for Claude. I've heard so many good things, so I probably need to dig in. I'd also be curious. I'm of the belief that AI is still kind of transitory. It hasn't become as ubiquitous as hey, I'm going to go Google this. It hasn't become I'm going to ChatGPT this, or I'm going to Gemini this. It seems like there's still some room for the warring factions to kind of play out and see where things go. But, sometimes I have Gemini open based on if I have a Google tab, and then ChatGPT will break or I've run out of credit. So then I go to Grok, and then I've got Meta spectacles that are hardwired into Meta AI. And then it's the hardware that you're using actually, to some degree decides which one you're going to pull up. But do you feel there's a winner in the AI race yet? Or do you think there's still some room for all these competing factions to win share of AEO or share of the agentic world?
I think there's so much room, but I do think Claude is completely one as of this moment in time. From a work perspective, I wouldn't want to be a consumer. I think ChatGPT is trying to reorient what they are, because I think consumer is going to be a race to the bottom and free. But listen, at the end of the day, if you're not paying $20 a month for cowork, and every time you sit down to do a task, you're not at least seeing if that task can be automated through cowork, you're playing with one hand behind your back, in my opinion.
Wow. That's a pretty good vote. I like that. All right. Well, we'll get into more of it, because I know you've got a lot of great takes on things like that. But let's start a little bit more with your origin story. So before you got into all these amazing roles and have had this illustrious career, where'd you grow up? What'd you study? And how did you get involved in the industry?
Yeah, so I grew up on the East Coast guy, New York, New Jersey, mostly Jersey. Went to school and studied finance and economics, which might not really make sense for what I'm doing today, but that's what you did on the East Coast. Brendan and I have this conversation all the time on our podcast, is when you're on the East Coast and you go to school, usually it's for finance and you're looking at finance jobs after school. So that was the path I thought I'd be on. Did a little work in investment banking, realized quickly that was not going to be the life for me long term. Worked in sports marketing, and then kind of Unilever was my first real big job in the marketing world. And what's funny is I wasn't even really a marketer there. Most of the work I did there was trade marketing or shopper marketing or customer development, which is basically sales. So I feel like I've always been the numbers, more finance guy on the outskirts of marketing looking in the early days, but it was more passion than it was maybe work experience and traditional education. And so most of the work, I just stayed very close to the marketing side. There was a point in my Unilever tenure where they had moved me out west. So now I was living in San Francisco, did not want to come back. That was supposed to be an 18-month rotation. I think 5 days in, I realized people live like this. The West Coast just operates every day like this. What is happening? What was I doing for the last 20 plus years? So decided to stay out west. Worked a little bit with the Unilever Ventures team, which was a venture arm of Unilever at the time. And I actually ended up going to a company we were prospecting for investment as the Ventures group. Went there for 4 or 5 years. We sold that company and then saw the writing on the wall. This was about 2018, that Creator was going to be a very big space in marketing for the next decade plus. So I spoke to a few companies, fell in love with Linqia and Maria's story, who's the founder, and Nader, who's the CEO, and have been here since 19. So it's been about 7 years.
Love it. I've always been curious around the name Linqia. Whenever I saw you guys, I suppose I was in the competitor set at my last agency, but so were 10,000 other people. So, at my first agency, I could count my competitors on 2 hands. In the creator economy, like I almost, pretty much gave up, because it was like every agency was doing creator, every publisher was doing creator, every ad tech, martech was doing creator. Then you had creator specific platforms, creator specific agencies, creator specific management companies. So
what's funny is when I started, though, none of them wanted to touch it. The dollars were too small. It was way too manual administrative. And then when it became the pillar of everything else, that you couldn't do PR, you couldn't do creative, you couldn't do anything without influencer, then all of a sudden, everyone woke up and said, now we're an influencer marketing company too. So it's been a funny decade.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the branding. What does Linqia mean? Why Linqia? I always thought like, oh, these guys must be doing like blog creators in order to get backlinks or something like that. But obviously you guys do
originally, yes.
Oh,
yeah, that's how it started. So
Yeah.
Maria Sipka, who's the original founder of Linqia, or the concept of Linqia, before she found Nader, and they made it into a company. She's Australian, and so the Linqia starfish, which is spelt differently, it's CK, not Q, but the Linqia starfish is kind of off the coast of Australia, and she loved it as a metaphor. One, there's a book called the Starfish and the Spider, which is a fantastic book that people should go read, and that was a huge inspiration for her in the name. And the other, which she loved, was that the Linqia starfish is regenerative. So if you were to sever a limb from it, it would spawn an entirely new starfish. And she loved that metaphor for the creator economy of the creators are kind of the source of the idea and for the communication, but they're just the beginning and they're the megaphone that kind of translates it out, and then it becomes a message into the crowd. And so she loved the metaphor for it. It's been a cool symbol for us over the last decade plus. Our logo is the little starfish. His name is Marco. And we tried to bring some B2C personality to B2B branding, which is very much needed in my opinion. And we're seeing a lot more of that, I think, from other B2B companies too in the last couple of years. But that was the origin story, and I love that, and that's why the branding has stayed.
Let's talk a little bit about B2B marketing for a second. You are a B2B influencer. You have a blue check on LinkedIn, which is highly coveted. You host the Creator Economy Live podcast, which I assume is associated with the Creator Economy Live conference that happens in Vegas each year. Okay, cool. And then you also co-hosted with Brendan Gahan, who's also a LinkedIn influencer agency guy, also has done amazing things in his career. So how important has it been for you to establish yourself as a B2B creator, B2B influencer, and how has that become a engine or additional jet fuel for the work you do as the Chief Strategy Officer at Linqia?
It's super important. So I'd say, I split my time between working with B2C marketers because I do strategy with a lot of our big clients and customers. And so that's B2C because they're all mostly B2C brands. I shouldn't say all. And then the other half of my time is Linqia is doing B2B marketing as Linqia. We're trying to get in front of all the brands of the world. And so it's interesting to split your brain that way to say this is B2B marketing, this is B2C marketing. I think historically they were much more separate than they are today. And I think the walls are crumbling much more today than they have been. So if you think about B2B marketing now being much more human-centered and a person is leading the conversation for the business, weirdly, B2C marketing is the same way. It has always been with sponsorship. I worked in sports sponsorship 20 years ago when you would try to associate yourself with the face of a famous person because they had a personality that you could attach to. Now you look at B2C brands, all the ones that are winning are these founder-led, creator-started brands. I was just looking at the numbers from Alex Earle's launch the other week where she sold out over $1 million in, what was it, five minutes? So I think personality, human, that plays into both sides of it. B2B, I find a little bit easier, to be honest, because your target market is so small compared to a B2C marketer where you're just speaking to so many subsets of the population. B2B, you can get much more granular in your target audience. But it's been really important. And I think that's because content is king and queen of the universe. And people said that 50 years ago, but in a very different way. Someone asked me the other day, what is a brand? And that's a very loaded question. There's a lot of way to answer that question. But in some regards, I think it's just a summation of its content parts. And the only way you are a brand today is that you're communicating with the customer. And the only way you're communicating the customer, in my opinion, these days, are the places where there's two-way communication. And that's mostly social media and through increasingly third-party voices. So I do think the principles used to be much different for B2B than B2C than they are today. And I think people have to just not even think about it that way anymore. It's just, you're a brand. Do you know your consumer and what drives them, and how do you communicate with them in the year 2026, which looks very different than other years?
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea that, B2B and B2C have kind of melded a little bit. You've got the idea of the founder-led brand that you just mentioned, whether it's an established celebrity or creator that then goes all in on direct consumer and finds a product that they can get behind and a formula, and they live their brand as a lifestyle brand, whether it's Prime Energy drink or Alex Earle, et cetera. And then you also have I love Jake Carl from Midday Squares because, he kind of pitches himself as the CEO of the company, he has two jobs: create content and go to speaking engagements. He oftentimes will talk about his job as like he's running for office. He doesn't do anything except evangelize. And he's basically created celebrity and built basically the reality show of watching his business being built as the lens in which his consumers can feel a connection to the founders and the people who are building the brand. And it's also this David and Goliath story against healthy chocolate going up against big chocolate or big candy. And it's really fun. It's a great content to kind of tune into, especially when people love Shark Tank. They love, The Profit. They love to see these shows and this entertainment culture around being an entrepreneur. It's kind of this perfect moment where, people are buying from people, not necessarily companies. And whether that's a consumer product or a B2B product, you want to kind of know the people behind the things that you're buying.
Totally. And for McDonald's, that could backlash too if your CEO is not the type of person who should be in front of a camera or is good on camera. Although we could argue if that was good or bad for them in the end. But I think something I talk to executives a lot about, especially at the CMO level, just trying to zoom all the way out, is in this day and age, when you communicate to your customers, what % of that communication do you feel like should be from yourselves as a brand, or should be from third parties? Third parties being creators and influencers, that could be press, but not you as a brand. And I think it's an important distinction because the way that they answer that is rarely representative of the way they allocate budget. Because right now, the trust for brands has never been lower, and the trust for creators and influencers has never been higher. And yet, if you look at a brand's allocation of spend with content and distribution, that doesn't match that equation at all. And so there needs to be a little bit of reorienting around how important this channel is for brands at the CMO level, which ultimately does come down to measurement, because what a CMO can't measure, they can't put money against, no matter how you slice it. Regardless of what you know to be true, if it's not measurable, it's not going to be something they invest in.
The measurement conversation has always been a tricky one because with organic social, it's not like you can just slap a Google tracking pixel on every single impression that gets put out there and track everything that happens on social. Like once you put things in the context of organic, it kind of gets to go and target the people that the algorithm says. And, you don't always have the opportunity to expose those viewers to tracking methodologies. So how close do you think we are to, having full 360 measurement around the creator channel?
The hardest part of that equation is attribution that doesn't happen in the way an attribution window is defined by marketing today, right? Because I think we're already somewhat there. The problem is what the data would show an attribution would say it's a horrible investment. And in reality, it's because they're influencing so many purchases that don't get tracked through any type of attribution model. And so that's the tricky part today. And it's great that Instagram is introducing links and reels and links and posts, and YouTube's expanding the affiliate program to people over 500 followers. And you're getting a much richer commerce ecosystem. The reality, though, is that for 99% of categories outside of fashion and beauty, people are not opening their TikToks and their Instagram to go shop your products. They're just not. And they might not be in that buying mode for a day, a week, a month, a year. But you better believe that that is one of the biggest influences on their purchasing decision, is the credibility that people give them in validating that decision. We even talk about AEO and how hot AEO is right now. Same thing there. People will go to AEO for search and discovery, but they're still going to social.
They're still Googling.
They're still Googling, and I still think they go to social for social proof.
Yeah.
It's credit. I'm going to make this purchase. Am I good making this purchase? Will I look cool? Will I seem cool? Like, is this a socially proven thing for me to do before I go make that commitment? They're still going to social for that. It's not a last click attribution channel, but they're still going to social for it. So it's one of these weird things where TV, radio, print, these channels for 100 years, we haven't been able to measure the way that we can lower funnel programmatic media. I'm not really sure why influencers thrown closer to programmatic lower funnel media than it is to television and radio and other channels where the equity is so powerful, but it's not just about getting people to convert on the spot.
Yeah, it's interesting. You keep hearing like, influencers need to be put where they deserve to be, which is in the affiliate category. But then you look at affiliate as a percentage of total sales, and it's only 2% of total sales is affiliate marketing. So, I think what you're saying around the idea that they're, immeasurable in some ways by design, because they're organic and they live outside of what you can buy. It's like what you can earn. And then you also had mentioned this interesting component and when I was reading through your bio, which is this idea that influencers are not a channel, they're a Swiss Army knife. They also happen to be humans, so they're not programmatic because they're human beings. They're not an auction, they're not a website, they're not something you can flick up and down with just a single lever. They're not social only. So how are you seeing the smartest brands think about their creator strategy across the entire funnel, including traditional things like TV, out of home, retail media, et cetera?
There's three dependencies that I think in order to answer that question intelligently, if I'm sitting in front of a brand, which is, what are you trying to accomplish? How long do we have to accomplish that goal? And what is the resource we have to accomplish that goal? Because I think a lot of times it's easy for people in talking heads to say, this is the best practice. This is who's doing it well. But the realities of the playing field inside of a company are oftentimes much more important than any blanketed best practices. So I think you can create pillars of a strategy. Search can be one pillar of a strategy. That's social search, that's traditional search, that's AEO. The idea that when I search something, am I finding your brand when I search it? And that's an important pillar of influence marketing. I do believe that's. I think media effectiveness is another pillar. Whatever you spend on influencer, you're spending 50 to 100 times that on paid media for most brands. So what content do I need as a media organization to make that 50 to 100x investment much more productive and efficient? That's another pillar. Cultural influence, that is a pillar. These are all pillars of a strategy. And then you could start deciding, what do I have money for and team for to actually accomplish here? What should I outsource to agencies? What should I do in-house? What should I ignore because frankly, I'm just not capable of doing it based on the dollars and the headcount I have? And so all of these things become different strategies. And I think a lot of brands who don't get influencer right just shove them all together. It's like, let's do an influencer campaign that supports this really big national campaign we have that has nothing to do with selling product. It's about this equity campaign. Oh, but by the way, like we really want them to sell product and we wanted to help us with our ranking on LLMs and AEO. And we want it to be this like really good content for this paid media ecosystem. What do you mean? Like that's not a strategy for all of these things. And so I just think you have to be honest about what you're trying to accomplish across the key themes and then build a strategy around each of those themes.
Going back to LLMs, I've heard that Gemini is highly indexing YouTube Shorts as part of their formula. Where else can creators help with the AEO funnel?
YouTube Shorts, YouTube in general, 100%. I think it was Reddit for a while was the lead player. I think YouTube has taken over Reddit because of Gemini's growth and the fact that they just make recommendations every time you Google search. LinkedIn is becoming increasingly important. But honestly, I think TikTok and Instagram, there's going to be some updates in the next few months or a year, and they're going to be as important. So to me, I don't know how much I distinguish. It's the hottest topic right now is AEO, and we're actually launching some partnerships in this space because it's such a hot topic. But I don't know if my principles differ from traditional search, AEO, and social search. The platforms might differ. I'd be much more concerned with YouTube for AEO optimization than I would generic social search. I'd be much more concerned with Instagram and TikTok for social search than for AEO, let's say. But the principles are pretty similar. You need really good tagging in your descriptions and your copy. You need to utilize overlays during the video to hit on key points that you want. You need the metadata to match. You need to design it for AEO discovery if you want it to be discovered in AEO. So YouTube's super powerful because even in long form, people use much deeper descriptions in longer form in their copy than a TikTok post does in its copy. So I think YouTube long form is actually a gold mine for AEO. But keep in mind, I'd say social, we don't have exact numbers, but I've listened to enough people to think probably 3 to 8% is being influenced by social of total LLM answers when you ask a question. So it's not that it's a leading indicator versus if you go in TikTok and you search for something, 100% of the answers are going to be social answers. On ChatGPT or Gemini, it's not 100%. Let's say it's 3 to 8% on average is the impact, but the impact's really, really important. So again, I think search should be one pillar of a creator or a social strategy. And it's super important. But again, if you don't have the time, the money, if you need immediate results because you're Pepsi and you're launching a new flavor in June and you need to hit 50 million dollars of revenue for that flavor for it to be a success in the first 3 months. You don't have time for creators to be optimizing for long-term search impact, or for you to do affiliate work, or for you to do gifting work. Like, that's where the reality of the playing field to me is the most important determinant. But yeah, God, AEO is a hot topic. It's coming up in every conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting also this focus on social search, right? The idea that Gen Alpha and Gen Alpha and Gen Z use TikTok more for a search engine than they do Google search. And Gen Alpha has money. You know, my daughter asked for her allowance in Apple Cash. You know, she is a creator herself and makes money on brand deals, little $70 Venmo transactions. And she's got, her subscribers, and, she does babysitting, and, like 12-year-olds have money now because they have they have digital wallets, mainly Apple Cash in the case of my household. And just as many Amazon and Shein packages show up at my house for my kids as they do for my wife. So knowing that, that the search idea inside of social search is so important for driving transaction now. Are there ways that brands can help infiltrate what I would call like the aided search? Like, when you're like scrolling either TikTok or you're scrolling Instagram Reels, it'll auto-populate a search for you, and then you can click on that search. Like, it's not just like people going to the For You page or the search button and then typing something in. These videos are actually prompting people to click down on a search. Is there a way to infiltrate those aided searches that come up inside of the algorithm?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if I'm a brand at the brand level that I'm that concerned with like dictating what is the aided search. I'm more concerned with when the aided search is done that I become a top video that I'm watching. And so for me, it's about query prioritization. That's it. Again, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's TikTok, wherever you're searching, I think the data in understanding what are people asking and searching for related to my category in general, not just my actual brand, but the category. What are those top queries of searches they're doing? And do I have video content of answering that directly without too much fluff, without too much big brand campaign or equity building? Just answer the question very, very directly with a favorability to your product. So how you include the product really depends on the question and what the answer is, but including favorability to the product. The other thing I'd add is it does change based on who's answering the question. So if I'm answering let's say you had a medical condition. If I'm answering the question, or, Dr. Tim is answering the question, or Dr. Mike, they're going to rank higher in the answer that is provided, whether it's TikTok or whether it's an actual answer through an LLM system. So credibility through experts in a category becomes also very, very important, because they're going to rank higher in what they show, especially on LLMs. Social might favor engagement with video a bit more, but in LLMs, expertise is a major factor in what they're showing. So again, if I'm a brand, it's less about, can I force my search to be the thing that's recommended? And it's more, can my content rise to the top when these top searches are being done by consumers?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like I'm hearing more and more about this idea of experts more often, whether that pertains to search or even just creator content or content that converts. For a long time, you had this idea of like, okay, well, there's celebrities that don't have the same relationship with their audience as influencers, people that became famous and built followings on social first. Then you have influencers that have big numbers and more of that parasocial relationship with their audience. Then you have creators that are really good at creating content that might infiltrate the algorithm, but they might not always have a massive following. And then you have this, maybe not new, but it's been at least being talked about as a new category, this idea of experts. Like, I'm a dermatologist, and I have a local dermatology practice here in San Diego, but I don't even put up content outside of my business page, which I generally use to drive traffic to my dermatology practice. But those people can still be hired as influencers, but the money that you offer them is not worth the same amount of time that they get to give somebody a facial in their office or do plastic surgery. So they're not going to take $100 for a post because $100 is nothing to them. So how do you approach experts that have the credentials, but might not have the following, but they do have the credentials and the expertise? How do you approach them differently?
Well, part of the question is, why is everything you just said true, right? If I was somebody, I'd rather be a dermatologist with 10,000 followers than a lifestyle influencer with 100,000 followers right now. Mm-hmm. And why is that true? Because the algorithms changed everything. Mm-hmm. We're in an interest graph. We're not in a social graph. So the following means significantly less than it used to. And so if you are a dermatologist and you have a following of 10,000 people, if I'm a brand, I could reliably say that those 10,000 people probably follow you for a pretty specific reason, and you have influence over those 10,000 people. The 100,000 people who follow the lifestyle influencer could have followed them for a million reasons. One post went mega viral. They might not get any engagement anymore. They might be sitting on that following for 5-10 years. So the following count just doesn't mean as much. That's why expertise is so valuable. Now, to the second point, how do you handle it, right? Because you're right. They don't care about a $100 check for content.
And they might not traditionally be great creators either.
Totally. And so there's an element of, what do I value this partnership? And part of the way brands are valuing it are not just the organic reach and impact that content has from that dermatologist, but one, which is what we talked about, how does it potentially help in search? And two is, what does it do in my paid media if I have somebody, let's say in garb in this example, or in office in this example, where their credibility lends so much to my media, which again is 50 to 100 times my influence for investment. And so you value it very differently. And so they are willing to pay experts significantly more. Also because the limit in the volume of experts available, this is simple economic supply and demand. There's much less supply of dermatologists with influence than there are lifestyle influencers with influence. And so if all of the brands who kind of swirl around dermatology related topics and products are going after the same group of dermatologists, they can charge whatever they want because there's a limited supply of them. And then that will change if they get a ton of money because more dermatologists will come into the influencer community. And there goes economics 101. But I think you have to be willing to pay more for the following count. And that's why the rate cards that I think a lot of brands maintained over the last decade don't really apply anymore. Because if you and I both have 10,000 followers, we might charge, it always was the case, but now more than ever, we might charge drastically different rates based on our actual influence and what we do in our expertise and our recent engagement, because it's all about the For You feed now and it's not about the following.
Love it. So let's talk a little bit about expertise on LinkedIn, which you have some credibility to lend to the conversation. So getting blue checked on LinkedIn, it's coveted, especially in the B2B world. It's not something you can just go out and buy. It's not tethered to how much media you spend on the platform. Trust me, I've asked. How was it strategic in going after the blue check? Did you execute a strategy in getting out and following the right people and engaging? If you had a strategy, what was your strategy to get to that blue check? And what has it done since getting it?
I don't think I had a blue check strategy, and I don't even know if I could tell you how do you get a blue check, even though I'm part of this programming community. So I have no idea why I was chosen. I think my strategy was a couple years ago, I read a post from somebody who said, if you post every day on LinkedIn for a year, you'll never have to find a job again. And I mistakenly interpreted that as I will be rich within a year, but quickly realized that he meant your notoriety in the industry will be so high that you'll be very sought after. And so I said, that doesn't seem like a high bar because you could schedule LinkedIn posts. Yeah. So you could write as many as you want in one day and then you're done for a week or two. But it seems like a huge return for not a ton of effort. So I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And as you go, this is what I tell everyone now, is just do it for 90 days because you find your voice. At first, you're like, what am I going to talk about? What does anyone care about? But if you really force yourself to do it every day, then you learn, this is what I actually enjoy writing about. This is what people actually enjoy reading about. And so I think consistency is probably the number one reason I do have that check mark, because I do not get massive engagement. I look at other people who are getting so much more who don't have that check mark. And I think consistency is one major reason why. And I think number two is expertise. People who would audit what I do would say, you're terrible at this. You don't really comment on other people that much. You don't engage community that much. You don't even respond to half the comments on your own damn post. You don't talk about your personal life that much, which is key to build personal, relationships with the audience. But I think the one thing that helped is I'm very specific and I have expertise over a topic and a channel, and I'm obsessed with doing that. I don't try to clickbait. I don't try to talk about other topics just for the sake of talking them. Like, I think there's an expertise that the platform has recognized that feels it's valuable in this level of expertise. So I think I could do significantly better, but with everything in life, I think if you don't enjoy it, then you'll stop doing it. And if you stop doing it eventually, there's no point in doing it now. And so I designed it to be something I'm happy to continue doing. Now, I will say LinkedIn changed their algorithm a year ago and they started prioritizing video when Videoverse came out. Then they were like, this is not working, but they changed to their recommend. And so I don't even know. There's no consistency with my following, which is normal on Instagram and TikTok. But on LinkedIn, it used to be if you follow someone, you do see most of what they post. Now it's not the case. So I did start a Substack 6 months ago. And now I pay pretty close attention to that Substack, even more so than LinkedIn, because that Substack I know reliably reaches every single one of those, I think 5,000-6,000 people who follow it. Every single week I'm in their inbox and they're reading and connecting with me. On LinkedIn, I have no idea if I post tomorrow, who is going to see it, how many people are going to see, if there's any reliability in my network seeing it. We were talking about South by. I used to go to Austin and say, hey, I'm going to be in Austin next week. Who's here? Ping me. There's no point in posting that because they're not going to show it to a single person. And so your community is being stripped out a little bit. So, and I've given LinkedIn my opinions on where they're going with this, and I understand why they're doing it, but it's getting harder. Like a couple years ago, I was screaming, what are y'all doing if you're not on this platform? This is just the easiest candy in the world to find. It's not so easy anymore, but I still think if you post every day, you will gain a lot in that 90 to 120 day initial run.
So do you prefer, because you're also a podcaster too, so video isn't foreign to what you do. There's some LinkedIn creators that absolutely hate turning on the camera. They don't like how they look. They don't perform well to a camera, but they're very talented writers. So they can write a great post, they can write a LinkedIn newsletter or a Substack, but then they never go on video. And then there's folks like you who can do both. Are you investing equally in your video strategy since you probably have cut downs from the podcast that you can put up, et cetera?
Yeah, the podcast is produced by Creator Economy Live. So, Brendan and my agreement was we'll do this if our work is minimal. So we get the guests, we bring them on, we have the conversation, all editing and promotion is outsourced to the production.
That's kind of great. So you guys are just the pretty faces, so to speak.
We're the pretty faces. Yeah. I'd say we're podcasting, so we have faces for podcasting. That's not true. Brendan's got faces for television. That guy could go to television. I got a face for podcasts. But again, I'm operating an age like we have a very successful, fast-growing influence marketing agency that has a lot of clients doing work every day that has business problems to solve. It's very hard for me to spend any time on content, to be honest. So the reason I over-index on writing and the written word is just a time thing. I am a creative and a marketer by nature. So if I'm going to do a video, I want to do it right. And doing a video right is not that easy. It's much harder than writing words. So even when I shoot something in the office, half the time I'm like, I don't have time to go edit this and put an overlay. And I'm not going to distract my video editors who are doing important client work with this stupid little video ask I have for my LinkedIn. So I think I could be much better about doing video. And I think everyone should be doing much better with video. But I will say, and then you said this in the upfront. For me, it's all about episodic. It's all about episodic. And that can be video. That doesn't have to be video. All it means is you show up with a consistent theme over and over again. And the reason that works so well is because, again, in an interest graph, not a social graph, if I see a video and engage with it, the platform is learning that they should show me videos that are related to this. If you do a series of content, this could be the career ladder guy, this could be chicken shop. This could be anything, right? As long as it has a consistent look and feel. If I like one of the videos, you are algorithm hacking because the algorithm is going to say, show them all the other videos in this so-called series. A series does not mean that it's written and scripted and you watch it in an order. I'm saying episodic content. That's what people should build. So I have streams of episodic content of my own right. I have a jobs post that I do every other week that people love. And when I don't do it, I hear about it. I have my podcast cut downs that I do every week and podcast promotion. I have my newsletter that I do I have these different streams of content. And so people get used to that. And you can come in through different paths now to my Keith world. And I think we had Camille Moore on the podcast this week, who I freaking love. I think she's a brilliant brand strategist. And she talks about world building. The Keith world that I've built, I think, is the same thing that I try to do for Linqia, the world that we've built for Linqia. It's an ecosystem that people could come in through different parts. But they're coming in because there's a lane, and that lane is something we actively work on in an ongoing way. There's not one post that grabs a whole bunch of people. There's streams where they're interested in that thing. And whatever brand you represent, your social, you could create different social channels now. This is the beauty of social. It doesn't even have to be for the main brand handle, but it can be. You could have 7 series from the main brand handle if you want, that are all completely different things, because that's how people come in. No one cares if that makes your grid look messy these days, because no one's going to a grid and watching that way. All they're doing is opening their For You pages, their recommendation engines, and something is popping up. And if you have a good variety of different episodic series, whatever series that person really likes, the algorithm's just going to keep showing them that. Even if you have a million videos, they're just going to show them the ones that look and feel like that. So I'm all about creating episodic content. Whether it's carousels, videos, I don't care. Just make it a series of things that is continuous and consistent.
I love that. Yeah, I've been trying to launch a couple of new formats. One is with my daughters called Kids React to Ads, where I have my kids react to the week's current ad campaigns. And then I've also been doing a lunch and learn series where I rate agency lunch and learns. I have the agency pick like where they want me to pick up food for the lunch and learn, and then we'll sit down and review it. So it kind of like creates a little bit of an interactivity when I actually go in and talk to some of these agencies, which is
totally fun. And if you're doing it for reach and scale, you'll know pretty quickly if you're onto something. And that's not always impressions and view through rates. That's often, or views. That's often how long they're watching.
Right.
Even if it's a very small group of people, if you're seeing people stick through the whole thing, and this is a 30, 60, 90-second video or more, that's a really good signal that you're onto something, and keep going. If you do this for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months, and you're not gaining any scale, you're not getting any views, I wouldn't be worried. But then if you're looking at it and people just aren't even watching more than a second, you're not onto something. You have to change the structure of that series.
Love that. All right. So we talked about agentic a little bit on the top end of the show, but we were talking more in the context of like personalized agents for, you as a human and your workflow, as either a creator or an executive. But the holy grail for creator marketing has always been agentic or programmatic, right? The ability to find, reach out, contract, review, and report on creators. And there's always been platforms, but there's always been a little bit of behind closed doors magic to like make all the parts connect, and because it's still a human-centric business. How close are you guys, or how close do you think the industry is to truly agentic creator marketing, where I can type a prompt into a dashboard and say, here's the types of creators I want, and here's the type of creator that I want to here's the type of campaign that I want to do. And then the bots go out into the world and do my influencer marketing for me.
It's never going to happen at fully agentic, is my opinion. But I think it's already like I can go into our platform right now, and Marco, our little starfish, will pop up, and I can say, hey, Marco, I need creators who live you're in San Diego. So let's say San Diego, I'm in San Francisco, San Diego and San Francisco, who are really into health and wellness, but not deeply working out and gym rats, but more like the everyday lifestyle, who's thinking about more like food consumption, general exercise, and it will recommend creators. And then I can keep talking with it and say, okay, I really like this person. Can we find a bunch more like this? We're going to get to a point where a lot of that could be automated. I can get lists to clients. I can add rationale to those lists. So we're building AI deeply into our platform. But I would say it's all guided, assisted AI through human intervention. Like nothing is automated. And part of the reason for that is the same reason why affiliate doesn't work for most brands. And that is because they need to actually approve the creators they're working with, and they need to approve the content that's going out if they're going to pay for it. So again, I think there's different work streams. If you wanted to do affiliate marketing, you did not care who accepted, or you don't have to look at any content. You are much more in tune to be able to operate in a fully automated world than if you are. I work with only large enterprise brands, which most of them will not allow that level of autonomy and automation. So I think there's that. And then there's negotiation. There's such hardcore negotiation on every single influencer contract. And then that fits into a broader ecosystem. So I think you could automate and assist yourself in a ton of this, which again, like everything else with AI, that makes each individual able to accomplish a lot more tasks than they could have otherwise. But I just don't see a world where you hit a button and the full ecosystem of a creator partnership is completely automated. For the same reason that I think if Mr. Beast tomorrow created an avatar of himself and we really couldn't tell any difference, and he went to brands and said, hey, you could work with me, but it's my avatar, it's not me, I think 99.9% of brands would say, regardless of cost savings of doing that, like, no, thank you.
Wow, interesting. And then in the same thread, Agento just raised a 380 million valuation, right? So is their tool, do you know much about them?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding, the last time I heard the pitch and last time I met their founder in a back room at Vid Summit somewhere, the pitch that I heard is creators can come onto the platform, read a script, and then their avatar is locked into the system. And then that system will go out and talk to brands, and brands can basically hire those avatars to create content for their brand, but specifically for whitelisted paid ads, not for your traditional influencer work. What do you think about that business model, or the idea that AI avatars might play some role in the creative process?
So I think they have a few different models, right? One is just trying to make the automation simpler for working with creators who are humans.
Okay.
And I think that's heavily on YouTube. I know a bunch of people are trying to figure out AI product placement so that if I'm a creator, kind of like with podcasting, where I could record let's say I'm on episode 100 and I go to you as the sponsor, I could say, you're not just sponsoring episode 101. I can actually place you in all 100 episodes as the first ad. I think creators are looking at that. If I'm at a table and I'm doing a lot of content and you wanted to be the soft drink of all of my content for the last 10 years, I could potentially with AI rotate that out. And so I think that's one model as well. And then you get the full avatar with creators. The problem, I think AI content is insanely powerful and is going to be used and should be used for a lot of product shoots, for a lot of e-commerce imagery, for a lot of B-roll video. I struggle with human content that is speaking in any way to the experience using a product, as a testimonial, even somewhat as a lifestyle video with product included. I think the FTC is going to have a field day with this. I think legal is going to go nowhere near it. I just think when most of content with influencers is about them actually saying they like a product or service, or them vouching for the product or service, they have to actually have used the product or service. And we even have to have them sign agreements that say, like, this is the true opinion of the product. So I think that's where the avatar stuff falls apart for me. I think a lot of brands are not going to care, to be honest. You think about the very long tail of SMB brands who are doing, meta ads every day.
The challenger startup brand, the challenger startup brand. Just grow at all costs, basically.
But I also weirdly think we're now on a path, or we already are, to a place where all AI generated content is clearly marked. And so if that's going to be the mark of death potentially for content, would you want, now there's questions, well, how do you know if something is like fully AI generated? Or if I have one little B-roll clip that had AI in it, is that going to be marked? But if there's a marking and it becomes a marking of death, would you do that as a brand? I don't think you would. So I think it's a very complicated time. As always, I would check with your legal team to see what they're willing to tolerate. If they're willing to tolerate things, I would definitely experiment, because you never know what will work for your brand. But I do think you could quickly lose all credibility with your audience if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about, my Gen Alpha kids of 10 and 12, and they speak about AI in a derogatory format. Like they're like, it's like a diss. It's like, oh, that's so AI,
And it's funny because they give so much crap to the brands using AI. Sora shuts down, but this AI fruit thing.
Oh yeah,
they love it. Fruit Island or whatever, Love Island.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't get enough of it. So
yeah, that's wild.
Humans are interesting.
So what do you think the trend is there, where they can be like so anti and then flip the switch? Is it because it was good storytelling?
I think it's good storytelling, and it's not trying to be anything other than what it is. I don't think it's trying to sell something or convince you of something. I think it's just entertainment content. And so brands, it's so obvious what you're attempting to do as a brand. And I think we think that we can just move past that and forget about that. You can't. So there's a way to do stuff that even if the audience knows your intention, they're okay with it because they love the content, they love the angle, and they love what it represents for you as your brand DNA, which is why I think brands should be doing way more partnerships with creators who are just doing things for good in society. And I think brands are scared that if I'm not promoting my product, then I'm not promoting my product. But at the end of the day, your brand logo and ethos is your product. And so I think when you're doing things for good for society, with other people doing things good for society, consumers know and they lean in. But if you're using AI and it's a tool to do something that you're not really communicating, the kids are smart. The kids are very smart.
Well, hey, I want to be respectful of your 4 o'clock hard out and give you an opportunity to do some plugs. So if folks want to follow along with your thinking or reach out to you at the agency, where would you like to send the audience?
Yeah, well, for me, you could find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Keith Bendes. I do a lot of content there. Then the newsletter is called The Art of Influence, which goes out once a week. And at Linqia, if anyone needs help with their influencer strategy, just shoot me a note, keith@linqia.com.
All right. Awesome, man. Well, I will go ahead and thank you for coming on the show, and I will do the hard out so you can get onto your 4 o'clock next task. But Keith, thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, Dylan.
All right. See you around.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Well, that was a fascinating conversation with Keith Bendes. He obviously is an OG to this ecosystem and has been around from the beginning. He puts out really great thought leadership around the industry and, just a host of interesting topics. So I would definitely suggest giving him a follow and following along. And then, on that note, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. That's how you will be able to tune in to future episodes and other great thought leadership that we bring you almost every single business day. And if you are listening to the show, an honest review on whatever podcast platform that you happen to be listening on is how we find a larger audience organically. And last but not least, if there's somebody out there in creator land, or maybe a CMO who's still juggling with the multiple prongs that the influencer marketing Swiss Army knife and tools allows you to switch open, or maybe somebody who needs to get serious about their LinkedIn game and commit to a 90-day strategy, don't forget to share the show. And with that, we will thank you so much for your time and